The Bears just lost a heartbreaker to Houston on Saturday, yet tonight's game against TCU might be one of their toughest tests of the entire season. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by FanDuel. Happy Monday, everyone. Start of a new week. I am your host, Cam Stewart, and thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. So appreciate that. And what is a big week for the Bears, specifically Bears basketball, coming off a heartbreaker is a good way to put it, against Houston Saturday. I was at the game. I got to run into a couple of Locked On Baylor fans, not all of which were wearing green and gold. So super happy to meet you guys and connect with you guys. That's always great. But it doesn't go the Bears' way at the end. I hate saying this after a loss. I am that much of a fan still that I hate saying it after the loss. But man, one heck of a college basketball game. I know you're not supposed to really care when your team loses, because it doesn't matter if you lost by 20 or lost by 2 or 6, I think is what it ended up being. But it was an awesome college basketball game. And I think that actually leads me to my greater point. And before I get to that, let's go through kind of what the highs and lows, the peaks and valleys were. Of course, a great offensive night for Ja'Kobe Walter. Maybe his best offensive night of the season. Maybe even all the way back to that game 1 against Auburn, his first game as a Bear. And he's had some good scoring outputs for sure, but just in terms of the efficiency on Saturday, he was great. Only turned the ball over twice, got 4 rebounds, and pours in 23 points on 7 of 13 and 5 of 10 from the 3-point line. That's an NBA player right there. For those of you who weren't buying into it with the slump, and I was saying he's still an NBA guy, that showed you on Saturday. He is an NBA guy. And I mentioned this in the postgame, but it bears repeating. He had a play in the first half that was so NBA, was crazy, like NBA superstar play. He has the ball, and this is when Baylor cannot score against Houston in the first half. Most teams can't. It looks like there's 6 guys out there defensively. And he's got the ball with about 5 or 6 seconds left in the shot clock. He's beyond the 3-point arc. He dribbles through a couple of guys, gets to the free throw line where he's still got 2 guys contesting it, and he rises up and hits the shot at the end of the buzzer. And I was thinking, man, the guy is named after Jordan and Kobe. And I can remember a play from like 2009, 2010, Celtics Lakers, big Sunday matinee game in Boston. And Kobe Bryant's guarded by Ray Allen, a Hall of Famer, who's got a hand in his face, and he makes that exact shot at the buzzer. The exact one. I'm not kidding. Dribbling to his right, gets to the free throw line with a big dribble, rises up against a good contest, and nails it. So that looked like a Kobe Bryant play. Take out the Ja, it was Kobe Walter in that play. He was excellent, and he was really their only source of consistent offense in that first half. Of course, the Bears turn it over too much. Yes, they did. Every team does that against Houston. It ends up being 19 turnovers, which is like, to be fair, somewhere between 12 and 14 against a good team, not just an average team. It's like 10 against an average team. That's 12 or 14 against a good basketball team. And I was surprised because I'm looking mostly at the second half numbers. That's what really interests me in this game. That's when Baylor really turned it on. And they had 4 turnovers in the second half. They had more in overtime than they did in the second half, which I guess isn't the greatest thing in the world, but they only had 4 in the whole second half. And they just did everything right, it felt like, in that half. They were 10 of 12 from the line, 6 of 11 from 3 in that half. Like that's great. They shoot just over 50% from the floor in the half, like that. And they held Houston to 33% from the floor in the second half, 9 of 27, and 29% from 3. But Houston, the only real real place they outbattled them was at the free throw line when they went 8 of 9 in the second half. That last one coming with 8 or 9 seconds left, or 16 seconds left, I think. I don't remember, but it was that last point they scored in regulation. So that to me is like Baylor played 20 minutes of outplaying the best team in the country. The best team in the country. Baylor was right there. So that I think is something good to take away. I don't love moral victories. I know you don't either. I don't love them with this program, nor at this point in the season. But I'm being forced to take kind of a moral victory here, at least for that second half. Does it count as a win? No, but they went toe-to-toe with the best team in college basketball and did not fold like so many teams have done this season. Houston's not just great, but they force you into submission. And it looked like Baylor was heading that way in the first half, and they did not submit. They didn't. They didn't bend the knee. And that, to me, it is something to take as a positive. Did they run out of gas a little bit in overtime? Yes. But most games are 40 minutes, and had every chance to win that game within 40 minutes. And I know there are some guys, some Baylor fans out there who are saying, oh, Yves Missi lost us this game. And I didn't notice it until after the post-game show I recorded on Saturday, because that cannot be further from the truth. Did Yves Missi have a good game? No. He has one basket. It's that one that ties the game, by the way, which is clutch as hell. And he misses the free throw. He botches a dunk in overtime. He did not lose Baylor that game. And I'm not going to sit here and be like the guy who says, well, we wouldn't be here without him. He's been our best player all season. That is true, but he didn't lose us the game, not because of that, because he didn't lose us the game. No one player lost us this game. The only thing I can point to is them being in such a hole in the first half. Because honestly, I don't want to overthink this, guys. Baylor lost to a better team in a great college basketball game. It really doesn't need any more analysis than that. If you're not a morning person and you're watching or listening to this right now and it's afternoon, look at the top 25. Houston is number 1, and they absolutely should be. I saw someone in the comments saying, either Baylor is overrated or Houston's going to the Final Four. Houston is probably going to the Final Four. They are that good. Like that. Did Baylor dig themselves a hole in the first half? Yes, they did. But most teams would not be able to come back against Houston, and Baylor did. So these were just two terrific basketball teams in a great basketball game in an awesome environment that Houston just made enough plays to win the game. Don't overthink that. Again, it's tough to say with 19 turnovers, but it wasn't even really a turnover issue because everything evened out. I said this at the end of the first or two possessions of overtime. Because Baylor they scored the first basket, got a stop, and then turned the ball over on what would have been a 2. I don't remember what it was. Someone was cutting to the basket. And then Houston turned the ball over right after. Bad turnover. And I just said, this is proof of what a great basketball game it is. Everything leveled out. When Baylor had a bad turn, for the exception of the first, 10 or 12 minutes, right? Baylor had a bad turnover. Houston had a bad turnover. Baylor hit a big shot. Houston hit a big shot. Houston misses one free throw in the second half with 10 seconds left or whatever. Baylor misses one free throw that would have won the game. So all of these things leveled out. I can't sit here and be like, God, this is such a mess. And I probably should be after 2 straight losses with a chance of a 3rd straight loss tonight, but I can't see it. This is a really good basketball team. They play in by far the best conference in America, and they just lost to the best team in that conference, and that team needed overtime to beat you. So don't overthink this. It's not any one issue. This was just a really good team beating a pretty good team by making enough plays. And that doesn't mean that Baylor can't go on a run. Far from it. but they do get kind of a tough test tonight. And it's not because TCU is a better team, but we'll go into why that's a tough test coming up after this. First, I got to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel, proud sponsor of today's episode and America's #1 sports book. Okay, we're done with the football, which is okay for basketball sickos like you and me. Let's go make some money off the great American game. The other one that was invented in Springfield, Massachusetts. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. They're printing money for you. It's $150 if your bet wins. Easy. Supplemental income. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with those quick bets, those same game parlays, all the exclusive props that are only through FanDuel. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/locked on and shoot your shot. Jason Tatum over in points, Luka Doncic over in points, all those great things. FanDuel.com/locked on, because FanDuel is an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. And Baylor does have a tough test tonight, taking on the TCU Horned Frogs up at Schallmeyer Arena. I always say Schallmeyer. I won't apologize for much to TCU fans, but I'll apologize for that. Schallmeyer Arena, which is just a nice suited up Farrell Center up there in Fort Worth. And these two teams do have history this year, which has not been the case for a lot of Baylor's games. We're going to start to see it now, the repeat customers. And of course, that was a thrilling 3 overtime game at the Foster Pavilion in January that TCU came out on top 105-102. That was in some ways a turning point in Baylor's season. That was their 3rd straight loss. They played a great second half the next game out against UCF, and they've been playing pretty good basketball ever since, even with 3 losses sprinkled in there. So different Baylor team, a bit of a different TCU team. But the thing that will worry me is the way the momentum that Jamie Dixon has gotten against Scott Drew here the last couple of years. Baylor is still comfy in that series. I think they've won 6 of the last 9 at TCU or whatever, but that's 2 straight wins that they've had in Waco. And even to just win as seldomly as they have against Baylor the last couple of years, that is closing the gap, because this used to not be any kind of rivalry. Baylor just kicked their teeth in every time. And it's been a turnaround, obviously, the last 3 or 4 years for TCU basketball in general, finally getting to some national relevance. And what frightens me about tonight is not anything to do with Baylor. It is all to do with TCU. They are a good basketball team, a solid at worst basketball team. And they did give themselves a little bit of padding this last week, even with a loss to Tech. They did beat Cincinnati pretty handily, and they're in a real tailspin, the Bearcats. But according to Joe Lunardi, like, this is still kind of hit or miss on whether TCU will see their name get called come Selection Sunday, which I think is St. Patrick's Day. And they don't have like the easiest schedule remaining. They've obviously got Baylor tonight. They have got to go on the road to BYU. We've seen how much of a test that is. Then they go to West Virginia and home to UCF. So 2 very winnable games to end out the regular season. So I think they're in. I don't think it's even a scenario where they'll have to win a game or 2 at the Big 12 tournament. That would certainly help, but I don't think it's an end-all be-all for them. But with only 4 regular season games remaining to still kind of be on the fence, you need to take care of business. And by that, I mean beat weaker teams and win your home games. And TCU is the weaker team of these 2, but it is a home game and it's a rivalry. And they will punch that place out. There will be all kinds of nasty fans in there, and it will be a tough physical basketball game, just the way we saw the first time around between these 2 teams. And we've seen Baylor against desperate teams. I'll even include BYU in that last week. We're coming off a couple of losses and then lost again on Saturday to Kansas State. But they came to play against Baylor, and Baylor didn't play a great game. So now you're coming off an overtime game on a Saturday, a really hard fought, emotional game that you could have pulled a huge upset on. And then you play Monday, which is already a tough enough turnaround, but you got to go on the road. It's not a road trip, but you got to go on the road and face a good physical TCU team that will feel very comfortable of their NCAA tournament hopes with a win tonight. So all of those things, I don't want to call it a recipe for disaster, but a recipe for concern for Baylor fans. Um, but then again, I'll go back to the point I made earlier. This is a much different Baylor team than what we saw that first time out against TCU. They did not shoot the ball well at all in that game. Baylor didn't. They were 5 of 22 from the 3-point line, which continued that stretch of those games that they couldn't shoot over 25% from three. That was bad. It was a bad game in terms of turnovers. 17 for the Bears, only forced 13 in those 3 overtimes. And you'll remember Ray J. Dennis had, I think, 3 in the 3rd overtime. He just kind of ran out of gas. He played 53 of the 55 minutes or whatever it was. It was insane. But it did come down to fine margins the whole time. And Baylor had a 10-point lead in that game in the second half. And TCU just whittled away at it. And Baylor went cold, but it was really TCU's offense that impressed me down that stretch because they were just bullying Baylor for layups in that game in that second half, which was something that I think attested to Baylor's fatigue, which was weird because it was after a week-long break. But Baylor just did not play with a lot of confidence in that game, and they let it slip away from them for that 3rd straight loss. Jameer Nelson had the big game, 30 points. I know, crazy. Jameer Nelson Jr. had a big game. In fact, after that game, I was like, look, I don't want to give TCU any ideas, but why the heck is this guy not starting? And he has become really a talisman for them. And he obviously has the big buzzer beater against Kansas State, that crazy buzzer beater, crazy contested 3 a couple of games ago that really helped their tournament chances. So this guy is legit. He's not just Jameer Nelson's son. He is a pretty high level college basketball player right now and has absolutely, I think, watching TCU from afar, if I have any Frogs fans listening or watching, please let me know if I'm wrong. But it really looks like he has carried them throughout the latter half of this Big 12 schedule, and it's gotten some key wins for that team. So that's the guy you got to key on the whole time. But much like the Houston game, in fact, I can draw some more like easy stats to pull that were just not good enough for Baylor in this TCU game versus that Houston game, but pretty similar in that there were really fine margins. And I have to give the Frogs and Jamie Dixon some credit. So they obviously won that game. They won in Waco last year. Baylor won in Fort Worth, but it took a heroic Adam Flagler performance where he scored like 18 straight points or something to come through with that win by, I think, like 2 points. So it was really not comfortable at all the last time the Bears played at Schallmeyer. And one thing we heard from the TCU guys after that win in Waco last year, it was Mike Miles who said it. It was obviously not there anymore, but it's kind of part of the culture that Jamie Dixon is building. They were not afraid to say it. They were saying, for us, Baylor's the standard, right? Like in this conference, they in Kansas have been the 2 teams the last half decade, and Baylor's the one who is getting these great in-state recruits that TCU was not. So they knew that it was like, we need to beat Baylor in order to get to the places we want to be at. And they've gotten much better at that the last couple of years. And certainly that will be the noise around the locker room, albeit with a lot of new faces on this year's team of, hey, we could really use one more signature victory to help our NCAA tournament chances. And we've got the standard bearers coming in and reeling and having lost a very emotional and physical game just, 48 hours ago, 55 hours ago, whatever the math is going to turn out to be. So Am I nervous? A little bit, yes, if you couldn't tell. But I do think Baylor's the better team. I think Baylor should come away with the victory in this game. But let me know what you guys think. Drop that score prediction down in the comments below. We've got to talk about the ladies a little bit because, boy, what an ending to that game. Baylor women get a big 1-point victory at West Virginia on Saturday. Really, in the aftermath of this post game of Baylor versus Houston, we get treated to an absolute barn burner in Morgantown. The two top 25 teams, but just barely. Baylor, who was at one time a top 5 team within the conference schedule, they were top 5. They are hanging on at 24, and they needed this victory, which they pulled out of the bag against West Virginia, who was ranked 22. It was a big environment there. It was actually a great crowd, great atmosphere. They did a whole blackout thing for it. They were really hyping up this game up at WVU, and Baylor looked like they had it in control, and then it slipped away. If you're watching the highlights, you could skip all the way to the exciting part, which was the last couple of seconds of the second half, where West Virginia has the ball with, what was it, 7.9 left. I think they're inbounding from the side. They have a 1-point lead. They inbound it into the backcourt, and I'm sorry, I don't know the player's name, but the young lady bobbles it. She dribbles it, looks like off her leg, and it's about to go out of bounds in front of the Baylor bench, but Jada Walker picks it up, gets a lane to the basket, misses the layup. Oh, no. But wait, there is a foul called, and also Jada Walker is hurt. Hurt to the point where the trainers have to come onto the court. Now, I don't know what the official writing of the rule is, but I had a beef with this earlier in the year. I think it was the Iowa State game for the men with Jaden Nunn getting hurt before having to shoot free throws, which he missed. But I've seen, and some people have been saying that if the trainer comes onto the court, that player needs to go off. And so if it's like the men's rule, which I think it is, West Virginia gets to pick the shooter. In comes Jana Van Gytenbeek. And Jana had been sitting on the bench, cold, at least for a couple of minutes. And she comes in, down one, packed arena, hits both free throws. Bang. Baylor holds on for the win. Asia Blackwell gets a block at the buzzer. But Jana Van Gytenbeek, man, this is a microcosm of what she has done for this team, because she has been massive for this team in the latter half of the Big 12 schedule. Like, really has come on. Sarah Andrews has had her struggles. Jada Walker has had a few struggles, not a lot, but like they've had their struggles. Jana Van Gytenbeek has stepped up in a bigger role in the conference season and has been, I think, their best and most consistent ball handler throughout the Big 12 schedule. And it's just a testament to how much she has been able to turn up for this team, no matter what they've asked her to do. And she's not the only one. I think of Jada Walker too. I think of Asia Blackwell and Bella Fauntleroy throughout the whole season of ladies who are just stepping up when their number is called. And it doesn't matter what they need to do, but they'll do it well. And Jana Van Gytenbeek, I think, has been a really, really good example of that. And you saw it in dramatic fashion on Saturday. Baylor women really needed that win, really needed that an extra top 25 win, because it has been tough sledding against ranked teams in the Big 12 portion of their season. Look, it hasn't been the season that we expected it to be at the turn of the new year, after they had just beaten their second top 5 team of the year, beat Texas in Austin. I know UT thinks they run this state now for some reason. I think 1 or 2 conference championships in the last 20 years. Okay, fine. But hopefully this is a turnaround for Baylor to be playing good basketball at the right time, because for all their struggles this season in the last couple of months, they're absolutely a team that can still make a run in the women's tournament. And I hope this is a turnaround because I like the makeup of this team. I like the grit they can play with. And you absolutely saw that on Saturday. So I don't know if Jana Van Gytenbeek drives a stick shift, but she knows clutch, man. She knows clutch. You like that? That was good, right? And hopefully that is leading to something more for this team. We will have a breakdown of the men's game in tomorrow's show. Y'all put me at ease in the comments. Tell me why Baylor's going to win this game. Please do. And let me know what you think about this women's team down in the comments below. Can they make a big run? I think they can. It's not nailed on, but I think they can. And let me know what you're thinking about, the run in of the schedule, the Big 12 tourney coming up, which it's kind of hit or miss, mostly miss for the Bears, and what you think about the bracketology going forward and what games Baylor needs to win. Drop that down in the comments below, or just tell me your favorite flavor of Gatorade, or, really anything. It helps the algorithm a ton. Even if you hate me, drop it down below. Be sure to like and subscribe. Tell your friends about it. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. We're the only place that's giving you nothing but Baylor athletics content that's not coming straight from the university. And so we, as in me, are really proud of that. Thank you for making it your favorite show as well. This has been Locked On Baylor.